Welcome to today's session for configuring Autotask Endpoint Backup. This is the first of a two-part series that will help get you started with the product. My name is Natalie, and I'll be explaining the steps required to set up your business and your customers with AEB. Let's go over a couple of assumptions that we'll be operating under for the purpose of our webinar today. In order to perform any of the steps that we talk about, you'll need credentials to Endpoint Backup Manager, which is the portal you use to manage all of your backup customers or teams. Your portal was set up for you when you first purchased the Endpoint Backup service. For the benefit of those of you using Autotask PSA, our professional services automation product, I'll be talking about how to configure the PSA billing integration with AEB. Last, I'll describe how you can use Autotask Endpoint Management to deploy Autotask Endpoint Backup. Before we proceed much further, it may help to clarify the relationship between the three products. Autotask PSA manages the workflows of your business, from sales to service calls to invoicing. Autotask Endpoint Management gathers information about your clients' computers and monitors them for critical issues. AEM integrates with Autotask PSA for seamless resolution of those issues via your service desk. Autotask Endpoint Backup, our topic for today, enables you as a managed service provider to offer an additional layer of critical protection to your customers by backing up their data. Not only can you deploy and monitor Endpoint Backup using Endpoint Management, but Endpoint Backup also integrates with PSA for easy billing. With that, let's take a look at today's agenda. Using a combination of slides and live demo, we'll examine 5 topics today. Our first 2 topics will address the initial setup in Backup Manager, your reseller portal. You'll configure the integration with PSA and then set up your actual customers. Next, we'll review the configuration of the required desktop agent software as well as deployment. We'll examine 2 major aspects of backup administration once your setup is complete. We'll look at managing and restoring backups from your perspective as a service provider, and we'll also examine the user portal available to your clients. So let's start things off by looking at the PSA integration. Obviously, before you do anything else with AEB, you want to make sure you're prepared to bill for your backup services, and the integration with PSA makes that very simple. While the PSA integration has multiple parts, our primary focus today is the ability to create recurring service contracts within Autotask in order to drive your billing for AEB. For our purposes today, we'll look at a fictitious company called Limerick Technology. They provide managed services to small businesses, and they've recently signed up to sell Autotask Endpoint Backup to their customers. They've been using PSA for a while, and they also use AEM for remote monitoring. Before Limerick starts onboarding customers, it's important to make sure that their billing mechanism is in place for the new service. So first, they'll log into Endpoint Backup Manager to set up that PSA integration. And to get started, they'll click the Settings gear on the right side of the portal and select Autotask PSA Integration. They'll click a button labeled Manage Autotask PSA Connection. The PSA integration needs your credentials to communicate with your Autotask database, so you'll enter in your PSA username and password and click Connect. From there, you'll see the option to modify to set up your recurring services, which we'll look at next. Your services enable you to bill for Endpoint Backup in Autotask PSA. The items that you can change on this page are the service name as you want it to appear to your customers on your invoices, the unit cost of the services, along with the unit price and the billing code. You can see that there are 4 total services. You bill per device according to the number of endpoints your customer is backing up, and then optionally for any additional storage your customers have purchased beyond the default allocation. You have the option to bill your customers either on a monthly or annual basis. There are 2 new pricing structures that I want to talk about. You can buy in $200 as a managed service provider and then have unlimited storage at $10 per workstation and $50 per server. We also have an offering where you can have 1 gig of included storage per device for $1 a month. Now, you don't need to use all of the services on this page. For instance, if you only bill monthly, you can go into the PSA and deactivate the yearly services. Even if you intend to bundle backup with your existing services for a flat fee, we recommend that you still use these services here to track your internal costs. You just want to set that unit price to 0. You might wonder why your cost for additional storage is set to a decimal number, as you can see right here. That's because additional storage is sold in blocks of 100 gigs, but Autotask billing is per gigabyte, so your cost and price are divided by 100 here. Now, your billing agreement might not necessarily reflect what we see here. Once you've configured your services from Endpoint Backup Manager, you'll be ready to invoice. Later on, if you need to change default pricing, you can just come back here. Once you're satisfied with your settings, you'll click the button Synchronize with Autotask to create new services or update services that were previously created. Obviously, if you want to edit If you want to edit an individual contract, you can do that at the PSA level. If you edit any of the services here, they'll apply to any of your Endpoint Backup customers. Now, in Autotask Endpoint Backup, your customers or your end clients are called teams. So I'll be using the word team to describe any end clients that we set up with an Endpoint Backup Manager. Back to our scenario. Now that our billing structure is in place, Limerick is almost ready to add teams to Endpoint Backup Manager in preparation for deployment. But Endpoint Backup Manager requires some initial information, specifically the contact info for Limerick's support team. This information is embedded into the Endpoint Backup agent that gets installed on their client's devices. Let's enter that information now. From Endpoint Backup Manager, click the Settings gear on the right side of the portal and click Support Settings. This is where you can enter in your support email, phone, and web address. Because Limerick has Autotask PSA, they'll enter the email address they use for incoming email processing so that they can create tickets from email, and a custom URL that redirects to their Autotask client portal. Endpoint Backup sends a verification email to the specified support address. So if you're using your incoming email processing address, you want to make sure that you check your support queue for a ticket containing that verification link. You can configure default destinations for different types of notifications in Endpoint Backup. To do that, click Notifications from the gear icon. You can select separate email addresses for both product updates and backup status. For backup notifications, you can select a different email address at the team level, which we'll take a look at in a bit. So now, in our scenario, Limerick is ready to add their first customer. In Backup Manager, they'll click the Teams menu and then click Create New Team on the right. Time for a demonstration. Limerick Technology has a new backups customer. Ennis Environmental Services is one of their existing managed services clients, and they just signed on for Limerick's new backup solution. They're a relatively small shop of 10 computers, and their contact person, who'll be responsible for accepting that end user license agreement, is Kate Oburn. She'll also be the team admin. We'll go into the VM and we'll walk through the onboarding process with Limerick. So here we are in Endpoint Backup Manager. When you first log in on your dashboard, you'll see a set of widgets, and I'll go through those briefly. So here we can see active teams and trial teams. Here's a widget dedicated to the teams that we currently have on a trial. I can drill into any one of these and actually see the details. Here we have device backup status. So we can see how many devices where backup has failed, backup is in progress, and backup is complete. This widget lets us go back and forth between storage usage by team and storage subscription by team. This lets you be proactive as a managed service provider and see who's using the majority of their allocated storage so that you can maybe offer them more. And here we have our client team summary, which gives us the number of active teams, devices, and how much included storage there is. And remember that included storage is storage that comes from each device seat. So let's go into Teams, and we'll create our new team. You'll notice that when you go into Teams, Users, and Devices, you can actually sort by the information that you're looking for. So I could go to Active Teams, Inactive, Trial, Inactive Trial, or Expired. I'll click Create New Team. And here is where I'll enter the details for Ennis Environmental. They have 10 devices, so with our billing structure, that gives them 100 gigs of storage. This can be pooled for use throughout the team. Each device doesn't have to consume 10 gigs. If I want to add additional storage and I'm not on the unlimited plan, I would add it in 100 gig increments. For invoicing, they want to be invoiced monthly. If I were creating an internal team, I would check this box for internal use license. You get one IUL per account, and that internal use license is really helpful with regard to demonstration or day-to-day use. So we definitely recommend that to become more familiar with the product, you set up an IUL team. We also have the option to set up a 14-day trial. On the 15th day, the trial will expire, and we can just go into Edit Team to re-enable them as a paid client. For the notifications email, I'll enter the information for Cato Byrne. And she'll also be the team representative who will be responsible for accepting the end user license agreement. Now, since the EULA can be accepted at the team level, you could put your own information here to accept the EULA on your team's behalf. And here we have the Autotask integration section. So I'll click to map team to a PSA company, and I have the option to map to an existing company or create a new PSA company for this team. Since Ennis is already a PSA user, I'll click map to an existing company and click find. Once I've done that, you'll see that I have the option to create a new contract for backup services or append the services to an existing recurring service contract. I'll call it AEB monthly, and I'll start billing for the 1st of April. So that'll be my contract start date. Then I'll click Create Team. Now, Limerick has created the new team for Ennis Environmental, and they're ready to start the process of deploying AEB so that their computers can be backed up. Now, let's look at how we configure each team for backup and subsequently deploy the agent. From the Teams list in Backup Manager, right-click or drill into the newly created team and click on the Manage Team button. Now we'll go back into our demo and we'll establish the initial configuration for the newly created team and Ennis Environmental. So I'll drill into Ennis, click Manage Team, and you'll see that I'm routed into Ennis's AEB portal. I'll start with defaults. And here I can set the default amount of user storage for each newly installed agent. Now this will only be storage allocated. If I have more storage available to the team, it'll stay there, but here is where I can set the default minimum. So we'll start at 5. I'll set my country. And here we can change the time zone. We're going to leave the setting Enable Endpoint Backup Upgrade Notifications unchecked. As the MSP, Limerick will be handling any upgrades. We're going to click on Lock Endpoint Backup Agent Configuration. This prevents end users from adding additional backup paths beyond the default paths that are specified at the team level. And I'll click Save. Once I've done that, I'll set up those backup paths. Now, if you're deploying to both Mac and Windows, you want to make sure to specify paths for both. I could enter an absolute path or choose from a set of predefined paths here and then add my subfolders if I want. So if everyone on this team has a folder called Financial and a subfolder called Q2, and I need that information backed up, I would add that here. I'll do the same for Mac. And you definitely want to make sure that with any directory you add, the agent has full permission to be able to back that up. Now we'll go to deployment. I'll click Configure. So here's where I can generate my new team key. So this is a unique identifier that links any installed agents back to this team. I can use the team key when I deploy AEB via AEM. You can have multiple team keys. You just want to make sure that you don't delete an existing team key if it's associated with an installation. And here I have my settings for automatic device approval. I can turn on automatic device approval if I want to skip a step and not have to, as the administrator, manually approve every device that gets installed. The settings that I have are always, where any device that installs the agent with the appropriate team key will be approved automatically and begin to back up immediately. Then we have when bound to Active Directory. Any newly installed device will automatically be approved if that machine is joined to an Active Directory domain. So this would allow devices in the office to be automatically approved, but if there's an employee that wants to back up their home machine, it would need to be reviewed and manually approved by the administrator. I'll put in the domain for Annis Environmental in this field here. Then we have when email obtained from Active Directory matches existing user. This gives you more control over who's permitted to back up by requiring you to create your users in advance. You can do this manually via add a user, or you can import a list. Devices will only be approved when the detected user exists in this list. And then we have the option, restrict automatic device approval to specified domains. So I could enter in several domains and have a list of what domains I'm allowing automatic device approval for. And I'll click Save. And here I have the option to download the agent or copy the link and send along in an email. And then I have the option to clean up, which just removes the record of past deployments from this page. And I can filter by pending deployments, which means waiting on action by you as the administrator, finished and failed. You can deploy the backup agent via Autotask Endpoint Management, remote monitoring, and management software. We have components for silent deployment for both Windows and Mac. You can find these in the COM store called Autotask Endpoint Backup. Now you can execute one of these components as part of a scheduled job in AEM, or you could run it as a quick job. And a disclaimer here, as a best practice, when you're in the process of setting up AEB for your customers, we advise that in order to ensure continuity, you keep any current backups with your previous provider until you've established backups in Autotask. Back to our scenario. Now billing is set, software is installed, and endpoints are starting to back up. Let's take a look at how to keep tabs on backups across your managed devices, and importantly, how to restore data when a customer needs it. Let's examine how backups are running another one of Limerick's customers, Shannon Security Consultants. They're relatively new to backup, and they're in the process of rolling out agents. So I'll go back to Manager, and I'll go into a different team, Shannon Security Consultants. You'll notice that when I drill into a team, I can see the team details, subscription, and usage information. I can also see who accepted that end user license agreement, and I can resend it from this hyperlink over here. If I scroll down, I can see all of the users within the team. I can click on View Team Devices. And here I can see the device ID, the team ID, and the team name. I can filter by devices that require an upgrade, devices where an upgrade is optional, devices that are offline, backup has failed, or backup is in progress. In this selector, I can pick and choose what information I want to be included. So I could remove last seen if I don't want to see when a device had last connected to the service. And I can uncheck device operating system. So let's say that I'm only deploying to Windows devices. That column is meaningless to me. There's a lot of information here, so we can scroll back and forth to view all of it. And let's highlight some important columns. Here we have fully backed up. Yes, green, that's good. That means the device is fully backed up. Then we have last full backup, which gives us a timestamp and a date, backup progress, and then pending backup. And this is exportable to CSV or Excel. Now to get more information about a device and its configured backups, I can drill into the device right here. Here I'll be able to see the paths that are set to be backed up and how much is stored against the total size of the backup. I can click on Manage Device, which, just like Manage Team, routes me into the portal for Shannon Security, except now I'm directly at the device portion. And here's where I can restore on a customer's behalf. So to restore, I would click Restore, pick what I'd like to restore. So I'll do the Pictures folder, click the Restore button. I have the option to change the user. So if Sean Smith is no longer with Shannon Security, I can select someone else and restore to their connected device. Then I have the option to choose the desktop folder or a default restore folder. And I can view the progress as it goes. There's also previous versions functionality. So I can pick from a series of restore plans to revert the state of a project back to that time. So if I wanted to revert the state of the public folder back to how it was on the 22nd of February, I would click this checkbox here and then select Restore. Again, I still have that option to change the user, continue, and start. And here I can see all of the restores that are currently going on, along with the progress bar. Autotask Endpoint Backup provides an excellent combination of centralized management and user control. Not only can you, as a service provider, restore files on your customer's behalf, but there's also an end user portal that's really easy to use and secure. Let's walk through another scenario at Limerick Technology where the backup portal comes into play. Paul is a support technician at Limerick. He gets a call from Mary at Shannon Security Consultants, which is the company we just looked at. She's accidentally gotten rid of an important file, and she knows it was somewhere in her backup path. Paul will walk her through the easy process of accessing and restoring her own backups. Paul directs Mary to her system tray. Once AEB is installed and has begun to back up, a green cloud icon appears, as you can see here. Right-clicking on this icon reveals the agent menu, where Mary can access the backup portal. Now let's go see what that portal looks like. Here we can see the icon. I'll right-click and I'll select Endpoint Backup Portal. And we can see that I'm brought directly to Mary Flynn's Endpoint Backup Portal. She can see her connected device, drill in, and see the paths that she set to backup. There's no separate set of credentials required. Mary can check the box to show deleted, and she can restore or revert to a previous version. Again, we have the same options, use desktop folder or the default restore folder. And we can see that the restore is in progress. So after Paul finishes explaining the steps to Mary, she's able to successfully recover her files. The result is a support call that ends well for Mary and a great survey score for Paul. But what it demonstrates to Shannon Security is the tremendous value of the service that they purchased, and it reduces their chances of calling in again for the same issue, which frees up Paul and the rest of the staff at Limerick to invest more time in other things. So let's recap what we covered today. We used Backup Manager to configure billing via the Autotask portal, and we created teams for our customers. Next, we saw how to configure team settings in preparation for deployment so that devices can begin to back up immediately. And last, we covered how you as a service provider can manage backups and restore data for your customers, and how end users are empowered to recover their own files using the backup portal. That concludes today's session. You'll be directed to a survey after it ends, and we appreciate your feedback to help us improve future webinars. Thanks so much for your attention and your attendance.